Hi peaches, it's Shaaba, welcome back to my channel and thank you for clicking on another video. Look, I don't normally do videos like this, but I felt the need to do a rant video because I watched a very popular piece of television recently and it's been playing on my mind. But it's just a show, Shaaba. Why do you care so much, Shaaba? You're making it too deep, Shaaba. With respect, anybody who has that opinion, I very strongly disagree with you. The popular shows that millions and millions and millions of people watch literally influence how we think and how we feel on a daily basis. Parasocial relationships, a trending buzzword that I've actually done a lot of research on. I have a doctoral degree in it. I know what I'm talking about. Trust me when I say that storytelling is powerful, it's important, and it's fantastic. Why do you think I love doing Am I the Arsehole videos so much here on this channel? We do it every Monday because we can learn so much from the storytelling of other people. And yes, it is also fun, but the big question that's been playing on my mind about Squid Game is, can things be fun? And by fun, I also mean dramatic, because let's face it, drama is fun. That's why we enjoy being a little bit nosy now and again. That's why we enjoy gossiping every now and again. Can we still maintain that level of fun while still being responsible? And I think the answer is yes. But do I think the new Squid Game show has done that? The answer is a big fat no. That's what I wanted to talk about today. So to understand Squid Game The Challenge, which is the full title of the show, I think we have to quickly recap Squid Game, the OG show. There are of course going to be spoilers in this. It is one of the most watched shows ever in the world, so if you're like, no, Shaaba, don't, you should have seen it by now. If you haven't, where have you been, babe? Click off if you don't want spoilers. I'm about to explain it. So Squid Game, if you happen to be one of the very few people who have not watched this show, is a Korean fictional show. It's based on a secret contest that happens. 456 people who are all suffering some sort of deep financial hardship are recruited in very odd scenarios around the country. They are brought to this one place. They choose to take part in this contest to win a very large amount of money. So what is this contest? It is a series of kids games, which sounds quite fun, right? Hell, I'll play some hopscotch. I'll do what you need me to do. I'll throw the little pebble at the circle thing. But of course it's not that easy, because if you lose, you get killed. That is the premise of Squid Game. So of these 456 people, one is going to survive, the rest are going to die whilst partaking in this very grown-up version, very R-rated version of kids games. And the entire plot, I don't actually need to ruin this bit for you. Haven't seen the show, there is a big twist at the end, which is integral to the social commentary of why the show was written, but not necessary for this video, because it's that format that I just explained. The kids games, the dying, the contest, the money, that the reality TV show, the last episode has literally just been released this week on Netflix, is based on. And whilst I won't give details on what that end plot line is, the big twist, Hwang, the writer of the show, literally created the show and has said that he created the show specifically to talk about his own economic struggles, the class divide that exists in South Korea, and importantly, the show is a social commentary on the ugliness of capitalism, right? Like, this isn't a new concept, this isn't a new format. We've seen how far will people go for greed? What will you do for money? We've seen so many movies, so many franchises do this in the past. Saw, greed, capitalism, injustice, Would You Rather, a movie that honestly still makes me feel like really quippy inside to talk about because blah, 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 blah. There are countless others. The point is, Netflix liked the show. I think it took Hwang like 10 years for it to be picked up. Netflix found it in 2019. They were like, yes, please, give me some of that action. It's a bloody good job that they did, because it became Netflix's most watched series in over 94 countries. The show was a phenomenal success, which is all great. So Netflix goes, hey, you know, whilst we're waiting for new seasons to come out, let's make a reality TV version of this. Also, in theory, fine. Sure, okay. Of course, in the new reality version, Squid Game The Challenge, it's real life, so people are not actually killed. The way that they sort of replicated, showed the vibe of the show in that way, is each of the contestants in the show had this like ink pack here on their chest when they would have died in Squid Game for losing the games that they were in. The little ink pack went and they very dramatically fell to the floor. Some of them were like, God, I'm so annoyed. And then they would fall to the floor. Clearly they've been instructed that that is something that they had to do to sort of act out the process of dying. And whenever a contestant was ink pack exploded, signified to have died or were eliminated in other new ways in the competition that existed in the reality TV show that didn't exist in the original show, and we'll talk about that in a second. There was this massive piggy bank that descended from the ceiling. It was giant, it was glass, and each contestant was worth $10,000. And so every time a contestant left the show, $10,000 was added to the pot. 456 players means £4.56 million. That is the prize that is to be won. That is, I think, the biggest prize in the history of game shows ever. And so it was a big deal, basically. This show is a big deal. It's caught a lot of eyes. There's been a lot of promo, understandably. And with the original Squid Game being so popular, I think when the show came out, I mean, I was accustomed to it too. My little cousin, who's absolutely obsessed with K-pop and Korean culture, was so into the show and actually like replicated the little honeycomb things, and you know, like people doing their own DIY versions of the challenges. So of course, when a show came out where people could do it for real, and then we could watch real people doing the fictional games, everyone was like, yeah, let's watch this, me included. I was really excited for the show. Now, the reality show does like quite closely follow the original show. It starts with red light, green light, which is the game where there's the little doll with the very fast rotating head. It goes really, really quick. There's 5 minutes on a timer, and all 456 people have to go from one line to another line, running, walking, moving in some way, and basically stopping every time the head turned. I love the fact that there are different cultures. One of the things that I loved about Squid Game was learning about Korean culture and the fact that these were like childhood games, and also reveling in how cute it was that different cultures seem to have similar versions of games. So I know in the UK, for example, we have What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, right? Where people hide often by a tree, and then you're like, it's 4 o'clock. They're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, ah! It's similar to red light, green light. Not quite the same, but it's cute. Okay, it's cute when people are not dying. And in the reality TV show, they did the game true to form. It looked like the exact same set. I don't know if they flew the set here because the whole thing was filmed in the UK, the reality TV show, that is. And there are some really beautiful set design. Another very iconic moment of the original Squid Game was the honeycomb challenge, which again we'll talk about later. It did lead to some pretty disturbing scenes. It's the mouth noises for me, like, dude, whoa. But there's also some new games in the reality TV version that weren't in the original version. One involving battleships, for example. I'm not going to go into them because this show is very new and I don't want to give you spoilers that are unnecessary to my rant in this video. However, there were some new elimination processes that weren't in the original show that I am going to talk about because it's literally there only because of drama. Unlike the original Squid Game show where people were only eliminated based on their performance in the challenges, which sure, some of them were down to luck. In the reality TV show, there was a lot more politics involved. It was a lot more dramatic. People had the opportunity, they were like taken to one side and basically given free rein on multiple occasions to just eliminate people that they didn't like. They would just have to say it. Sometimes it was silent and in secret, so the rest of the teammates weren't publicly aware of who was voting who out. Other times it was very public and they had to basically say, I'm voting you out. You over there, go, and they would literally be eliminated on the spot. Drama, right? Drama. It's the only reason it's drama. And you know what? In theory, what is wrong with a little bit of drama, right? Like, that's why shows like Big Brother exist. I used to be very against and then got really into and would justify it to be like, oh, well, you know, I'm studying psychology and really what I'm doing here is just looking at people. So, you know, you don't need to justify it. It's okay to admit that dramatic TV is enticing to watch. So yes, I was super excited to watch the show. I also feel a need to disclaim, like, I don't think consciously that it biases my view in any way, but just in case, like, I want to be fair, I want to put it out there. Jamie and I were interviewed to cast for the show. Like, I want to fully disclaim it because it feels weird for me not to. We took a bunch of calls, we did some videotape interview type things, and ultimately decided, Jamie shared, I'm trying to phrase this in a very nice way, not because I'm trying to protect anyone's feelings, just because I want to treat the situation with the respect it deserves. It might sound funny, but essentially Jamie's just like, look, it's not the challenges that I'm worried about, it's the bit in between the challenges. It is the living situation, because having watched the show and speaking to the casting team involved in the show, essentially you would be living with 456 people in one massive dorm room. You are all sharing beds, food is not within your control, timings are not within your control, personal hygiene is not within your control. And for Jamie in particular, who has a very complicated history with anxiety and emetophobia, and he's spoken about it online, I'm okay to be sharing this with you, basically it was just not the right environment for Jamie. But there were so many interesting questions that were asking, suggesting that maybe there would be people on the show who knew each other but weren't showing that they were going to know each other, and we were just so intrigued. So obviously when the show came out, we were like, oh my gosh, it's happening, let's see. And I was pissed off. I'm not gonna lie, I watched the first episode and I was raging. I was so mad. And now at the time that I'm filming this video, I've watched all of it except for the last episode, because the last episode is not out yet, and I am still mad. It's still good TV, it's still good drama, which is what makes me so sad. I'm not going to be dishonest, but I feel like it's important that we have these conversations and bring it into the forefront and figure out a way that we can hopefully stop reality TV from going into a decline that sort of prioritizes capitalism at the compromise of like ethical integrity. That felt like a lot of words. Essentially what I'm trying to say is watching the show made me feel like reality TV is taking a dangerous turn, and I don't want to see that happen. So how? These are big claims, right? I'm saying, hey, this show, Squid Game, is highlighting the worst of humanity, and it is capitalizing on the bad parts of humanity for greed and profit. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. And the reason this annoys me the most, right, the real kick in the teeth, is that this show, this reality TV show, was based on the original show that was literally made to highlight the injustice and highlight the problems of capitalism and greed. That is why Huang wrote the show in the first place, and yet here we are with such a lack of insensitivity, just doing it all over again, but real this time. And I'm not trying to villainize producers or platforms that show these shows, right? Like, they're everywhere. And two, ultimately, I don't think the shows are bad. I just think we need to take more care when we are creating these shows, and I think we really need to highlight in these conversations that we're having about reality TV that platforms and production teams need to make sure that they are safeguarding the people that they are using in the shows and using their platforms to put out good messages. I really do think that's very important. This has been like a very long-standing debate of, can TV just be good TV? Can it just be entertaining? Why is it that we need to put out things that are educational or useful or good in some way? Can't TV just be TV? And my answer is, why can it not be both? Why does it need to just be entertainment without doing something good? I'm not saying we need to turn every concept of a TV show into a Mr. Tumble episode. All I'm saying is call out bad shit that happens. Use good people. Look after the people that you put on the shows. Like, if something bad happens, if an important social issue is mentioned, highlight that issue in a responsible way. And this isn't something that is in any way new. Even from the days of Big Brother, you know, viewers have been having this conversation. What is right? What is wrong? Then came Love Island and the huge anti-bullying message that came from a massive tragedy that all of a sudden seems to have been forgotten, because since all of these big shows, Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, Squid Game, the reality, there's so many different shows. I just see bad practices. I see people doing bad things and not being called out for it, and I hear afterwards of bad consequences that we as viewers when watching the show don't know about, and the way that it's all being justified is, oh, but it makes good TV. Like, that is not the only important thing when we're using real people who live real lives. Like, they're not actors, they're not fictional beings, you know. The commentary that happens afterwards, the parasocial relationships that every viewer forms with these real people are real. They carry it on. There are interactions on social media. There are further platforms that people get. Like, how many of today's creators and influencers who are quite prominent have made a career from the platform of being on reality TV? We need to be careful about who we're giving those opportunities to. And by we, obviously I'm not a production person. I'm saying we as a society, but specifically the onus is on production teams to do better. Do better. All right, so I have 3 big issues about Squid Game, the challenge. My first issue being, it is so white. Right? It's not just me, but it's so white and it is so American-centric, which is a problem when the original show that you're basing the reality TV show off of, the show that had so much success, was Korean in nature. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just a repeated pattern of society, but I do think it's insensitive. Netflix literally took on the original Squid Game show as part of a drive to expand their foreign offerings. That was the plan. They were expanding foreign programming offerings. And it's something that we've seen works amazingly well, right? Not just with Squid Game. There's Alice in Borderland. And you know, I'm actually not going to name all of the shows because there are too many. And it's not just in TV that we've seen this. K-pop has absolutely dominated music. Hispanic and Latin American influences have come in and made a real dent and presence on Western music, and it's amazing. Not just in the sense that we have cool art forms that show an array of culture, but also in the sense that it actually does have a really big impact on reducing prejudice and increasing diversity. It reduces the sense of the unknown. It allows cross-cultural learning in a really passive and fun way. And you can't tell me that it's not successful, because Squid Game was an entire show in a foreign language where most of the cast were Korean, and it literally broke so many world records. It was the most viewed show in 94 countries. So why did the reality TV show have to be so white? I don't get it. I don't understand. This isn't to say that there were no references. Of course, the games that were played, they were still used Korean names for. And I do want to point out for people who haven't yet watched it, there are a number of applicants. What is the word? Contestants. Contestants on the show who are people of colour. They have black contestants. There are South Asian contestants. There are Eastern Asian contestants, but I'm not going to lie. I was like, I'm primed for specifically looking for diversity. It's just what I do. I think being a brown person, I'm like, can I Can I see? Are you there? Are you there? And in terms of the coverage and who was covered, you did have to look for Eastern Asian representation in particular, which makes me feel so sad considering it is from an Eastern Asian show. I definitely think that there could have been more cultural elements brought in. I definitely think that that could have been done in such a passive and fun way still, while still being entertaining and not making it seem like it's forced down your throat. I'm not saying diversity has to be everywhere. I'm just saying respect the show's origin, respect the values of where it comes from. And I think, as I said, I don't think this is done intentionally. I just think that US culture is very blind to Asianness. I see it all the time. And in my personal experience, which is all I can speak from, right, I have found US culture to be very Asian erasing in particular. And when I say Asian erasing, I mean for both South Asian and Eastern Asian communities, more so than I've ever seen here in the UK. I feel like the UK is like quite tuned in, and I don't know if it's a demographic thing. I don't actually know what the stats are for, you know, how many of the population ratio wise are South Asian, Eastern Asian in the US compared to the UK. But in my experience, being part of literal diversity programs with US organizations, which is something that I do a lot in my job, it surprises me how much Asian communities are just not even considered as part of the conversation. It's not even done in like a rude way. It's just like the US organizations that I've worked with in these cases are like, yes, we need diversity. Let's carve a huge space out, understandably and rightfully so, for the Black community, which definitely deserves to be heard, right? And I also see a lot of space being carved out for Hispanic and Latin American communities, which I guess makes sense reflecting what I see in American media, right? But South Asian and Eastern Asian communities are not part of that conversation. There are no spaces carved out intentionally for those communities in my experience from what I've seen working with US organizations, and even in things like forms, right, like demographic forms. If you look at demographic form in the UK and they're asking you about your race, your ethnic background, you'll see like full-on blocks that say white other, black other, Asian other, and so on and so on. On all the US forms that I see, I never know what box to tick. It's often just the other section because the US standard is white, black, Latin American, and also Hawaiian or Asian Pacific. And that is a term that, as a Brit, I'm not very familiar with. My point being, for a show that is literally influenced by a Korean show, by an Eastern Asian show, I definitely think that the show could have done a lot better at respecting those roots. And again, I'm not at all suggesting it's done intentionally. I think with these shows, what you see is a reflection of culture, what people know. And if they don't know to have that as part of the conversation, you see people erasing and making moves that have a lot of unconscious bias, and often due to privilege, not even realizing that something like that has happened. Something that like really pinged my brain, which may be controversial to say, like I'm not suggesting that this is what happened, I'm just saying it made me feel some kind of way, was really early on in the show. In the first episode, there was the first opportunity to eliminate people. Also, I should say, for the purposes of this video, I don't want to use anybody's names because, as I said, these are real people. They have real social media platforms, and I don't want to incite or encourage anybody to, you know, go and speak negatively directly to them. That is not the point of me making this video. I'm just trying to talk about it from a commentary point of view. So 2 contestants from the show, both of who were white, were sent to the kitchen to do a chore. They were like peeling carrots or whatever. And they were told secretly that they had the opportunity to eliminate one player from the over 200 people who had survived that first red light, green light game, who are all now in the dorms talking to each other, introducing that first bit of drama, especially because people didn't really know who people were yet. Now, we have to remember that we can only see things from the very edited and curated output of the final show, which I promise you is always a very different experience to what the contestants actually in the show are going through. So as an audience member, what we've been primed with up until this point was a very heavy dose, a very heavy presence of one specific contestant who wore the number 432, because all of the contestants have numbers on them. Now, contestant number 432 to me sounds like a huge red flag, and I think the show really leans into that by showing a lot of the VT footage of them doing an interview, really editing and highlighting this person with quite problematic phrases. Things like, if I'm the way that I am, it's because God made me this way, and talking about being aggressive in that context, right? They're walking around the dorm, they're speaking to people, they're like encouraging people, kind of like in a pecking order, like baiting people to like be very alpha and doing push-ups and being like, oh yeah, you know, like I'm amazing. And you can tell from the reactions of other people, again, the reactions that the producers of the show have highlighted us as viewers to watch, that this person is bad vibes, right? For the show, for the dorm, bad vibes. Now, these 2 contestants who are making this elimination decision specifically both talk about contestant 432 and are like, hey, well, this person seems to be bad news. This person, we don't like them very much. But then in what seems like a very odd sort of 180 twist move, they decide to eliminate a brown contestant that we have hardly heard from at all, giving the reasoning that they seem to be speaking to a lot of people. I'm like, I am not at all suggesting that this was an intentional racial elimination. I don't think that those two contestants were like, oh, you know what? There's a brown person over there. Let's get them out because we can. What I am suggesting is there may have been a level of unconscious bias that went into the decision, because why is it that a brown contestant who's going around talking to people, getting to know people, when there's literally 200 plus of you in a room trying to get to know each other, because that is the point of the show, why is this person deemed to be doing a bad thing when literally everybody else is doing it too? Like, that made no sense to me. And the biggest issue that I had with this is not the decision, but how strange that decision seemed to be, because I don't think the producers of the show showed us enough of what their reasoning was. There may have been really good reason for eliminating this one person, but what the show showed us did not provide good reasoning. And to me, all that does is lean into stereotypes and show viewers that people are justified in treating people of colour differently for doing the same thing that other people are doing, which isn't the case. And as I'm saying, I don't think that is what the contestants intentionally did. And that just being one straw on many straws of a very white remade reality version of an Eastern Asian show pissed me off. My little brown dar, my little POC dar went pinging, and it got me very angry. And that's not to say, of course, that I will blindly support anybody just because they happen to be a POC contestant. In fact, that leads very nicely onto my second point, which annoys me even more, and that is villain casting. I've personally been part of like 4 serious casting processes for reality TV things. So I feel like when I'm talking both as a viewer, but also from a person who understands through the leading questions, through what they say they're looking for, and through when they say, you know, like, when you do this, be spicy. Be spicy. Be loud. Be problematic. Like, this is what you are told. It is so obvious that a lot of shows literally just cast for drama. And the consequences of that is, sure, it's a TV show, but it's also an opportunity for one person to win a life-changing sum of money. Like a huge, huge cash prize. And so why, pray tell, are we giving people who do bad things a chance and an opportunity to have something so good? I just think it's bloody rude, and I just don't understand as well why these bad people, who are obviously good drama, right, like they're good for TV, end up getting so much of a platform and so much airtime because they are so bad. I mean, I do understand. I get why, because it's good TV, but it's not right. It's not right. I've already mentioned contestant 432, who was so alpha and so aggressive. He actually had like a bit of an altercation with another contestant who I think was contestant 198. And again, not using names, not out of any rudeness, but because I don't want to encourage anybody to look these people up and give them even more airtime. There was actually a really cute duo. It was like a mum and son duo. If you watch the show, they're also featured quite prominently. And the mum did a very mumsy thing and was like, yeah, this guy 432, I'm gonna check him out because sometimes people don't come across the way they intend to. I want to see if he's actually like that. She went to go speak to him and coming back, she was like, yeah, he's definitely like that. Like, this is his reason of being. Like, this is not an act. This is genuinely how he is. This guy said that crying was a weakness. He was like telling someone off for crying and being like, why are you being so emotional over this thing? As I said, like, his ways, he justified his very like alpha, intimidating ways, being like, well, you know, this is how God made me. And in this altercation that he had with a particular contestant, 198, who kept calling him a frat boy because he was acting in like quite an intimidating way. I'm not suggesting it's the right thing to do to call someone a frat boy. However, his response to being called a frat boy was to say, don't call me that again. If you do, I'm not going to hit you on the show. I'm not going to be aggressive to you now because we're on the show, but just you wait until after, basically. He literally threatened violence to a contestant on camera, and it was filmed and glorified, and no consequence was shown. Literally no consequence was shown. And what makes me so frustrated about this is it wasn't the first time another contestant literally did the exact same thing. They said, just wait, I'm gonna find you after the show, inciting violence, and nothing came of it. Nothing came of it. It was good TV. It was prioritized. It was given the airtime. These 2 moments were specially selected out of the thousands and thousands of minutes of footage that they had, and yet no consequence was shown to viewers. And what does that mean? What do you see? Like, I'm pretty sure even in Big Brother, right, when people have said bad things or suggested or incited violence, even done things, they have been called into the diary room, right, and they've been told, don't do that. In some cases, people have then been off the show for being super intimidated. They've literally been kicked off and not given the opportunity. Because why should people who are doing doing bad things be given this opportunity? Why should they be allowed to continue? And what kind of message are we showing if production teams are showing people being really aggressive and not showing consequence? What you're literally telling to viewers in the storytelling that you are showing is it's okay to act this way. You can do this, you can incite violence, you can tell people that you're going to go smack them after the show, and you're not going to get any consequences for doing that. I just think that is so irresponsible of a production team. You don't do that. If you're going to see people act that way, you bloody call them out on it. And if you televise that moment where you see people inciting violence, you also televise telling them off, because it's not just the contestants who are dealing with the impacts of this, it's every single person watching and being influenced by what you are putting out to millions and millions of people. That is not, however, to say that I like person 198, contestant 198, because contestant 198 is also a massive douche. He himself is a super problematic person. I'm the kind of person who looks up the contestants online throughout the show, mostly because my mum mode kicks in and I'm like, oh, I can tell that you're going to be bullied by strangers on the internet about this. I know that being bullied by strangers on the internet isn't a nice place to be, so I want to come and see and send like a nice message of support. That's like my vibe. I went to contestant 198's page. Turns out he's a really well-known TikToker who is not just a TikToker, a prank TikToker, who in my opinion is super problematic. I don't think that it's a problem that, you know, the castings of these shows go primarily to people who already have a bit of a platform. It makes sense. Of the mother and son duo, the son is an actor. They find people who already have a platform because they know they're going to be good on camera to some extent because they're sort of used to doing this, but also it's free promo, right? Like there's already a group of people who you know are going to be interested in the show because they're already interested in this one person who then put in on the show. Makes sense. But why cast people who are problematic? When I literally went on the Contestant 198's TikTok account to see if they were being bullied because I didn't think that they deserved to be bullied, what I found were videos of them glorifying animal abuse and degrading women and so many other things. Not only was this the case, but in the comments when people were saying this was a horrible thing, they were clapping back at them. And then when people were glorifying the bad things that they did, they were publicly liking and supporting those comments. And I was like, well, there are billions of people in the world and there are hundreds and hundreds of people who I'm sure have actively applied to be cast on the show, as well as the people that the show's reaching out to, you know, try and get on board. So why, when you have such a rich, wonderful pool of people, are you directly casting people who you know are doing bad things and who are using their already existing platforms in an irresponsible way? And again, this isn't the only show that's doing it. Married at First Sight, Love is Blind. So many reality TV shows are called out afterwards, or contestants who have gone through things and are literally having to go through therapy or are dealing with mental health consequences that are negative and totally avoidable by being on a show, come out and say, hey, this has been a problem. And a lot of the time is because the production companies have not vetted people adequately or have intentionally cast people who were known for doing bad things. Why? Because it makes for good TV. But why is this seen as a justifiable reason? And yes, you can't always tell how someone's going to act or if they're going to act bad, but if they do, it is then your responsibility, especially if you're going to glorify and highlight that moment, to show social consequences for bad actions. And again, the really sad thing about all of this is that it's what the entire show was trying to go against in the first place. The OG show was made against this idea of greed, and yet this show is putting all of these bad things in specifically for extra profit. And we watch it more because it's drama. Like, I'm lost for words. And this brings me on to the third and final point that I will rant about in this video, and that is how a reality TV show uses drama at the expense of the contestants specifically. I don't think a lot of people understand, like, the amount of effort that goes into these shows that we watch. You know, like for us, it's like, what, 25 minutes on TV when you consider certain adverts, an hour on telly. A series is what, 6 hours of your life. But what people go through, what goes into that output of 6 final videos is a lot more than what you could possibly imagine. I'll give you like a real example. Jamie and I were on the TV show, the Channel 4 one, Bride and Prejudice, where like our relationship was closely followed. I'm pretty sure the show was like 6 episodes, maybe it was 8, I can't recall. My point being, our story, we were on the show for maybe like an hour of it, right? Across multiple episodes. If you squished up all the bits together that you saw of Shaaba and Jamie and their relationship journey, it was like an hour. But to get that 1 hour of footage, we had a team, a full-on team with us pretty much every single day for 6 weeks. What we see as end users and as viewers is a fraction of what goes into things. I just did something recently, which was like a piece of extra work. It's super, super common for single scenes that are probably like 30 seconds of airtime in a movie to take up an entire day of filming. Hundreds and hundreds of people for an entire day are doing the same one thing for 30 seconds of what you see. I was actually speaking to someone in a Disney movie who said that their clip, right, like they were on screen for like under 10 seconds of this movie, but they were flown out and made to do this same scene every single day for 3 weeks solid. 3 weeks. it's a lot. Now with this show in particular, multiple contestants have already come out and said that they weren't treated fantastically, to the point where some people are threatening legal action against the platform and the production team. And just over things like standard work conditions. When we were watching Red Light, Green Light during the first episode, we were like, I wonder if they were told that they had to put their hands in their pockets, because everyone when they were running with their hands in their pockets. Red Light, Green Light is a show where the robot thingy turned its head around. The timer was set for 5 minutes. So you as a viewer think, oh, well, this is happening over a 5-minute period, right? People are running from one line to another in the course of 5 minutes. No. One contestant from the show said that they were actually filming that scene, the red light, green light game, for 9 hours. 9 hours. Apparently the conditions were below freezing, their limbs were super, super painful, a lot of people were going purple, which is why everybody had their hands in their pockets as like a warmth thing. A couple people collapsed, medics were called out to sort of like give them medical attention, and all of this was happening when they were told they would be out there for a couple of hours max. When people are complaining about hypothermia, you are clearly not doing the right thing as a production team to be kind to the people that are taking part in your show, and I just don't think that that's right. I don't think that's fair. And the other very prominent example of not being fair to players, in my opinion, and prioritizing drama at the expense of your contestants was poor player 299. In the original Squid Game show, there's this honeycomb game where of these little discs of honeycomb that are placed in little tins, people are given a needle and they have to trace out an indented shape. And there's 4 shapes. There's a circle, there's a triangle, there's a star, and there's an umbrella. And obviously the more intricate the shape is, the harder it is to trace it without snapping the biscuit. If you snap the biscuit, you die. In this show, they had the exact same shapes. If you snap the biscuit, you get eliminated. And the way that they made it different to the original Squid Game is, in the original Squid Game, it was down to chance as to what one you chose. You sort of like selected a line to stand in, and that determined the shape that you were ultimately left with. In the reality TV show, the first 4 people in the lines that people randomly went behind had to then fight it out to choose which shape would be there for their team. And if they didn't come to a unanimous decision, all 4 of them were eliminated. And this happened multiple times until the 4 people, including player 299, went in and came to a unanimous decision, where player 299 took the most difficult shape, the umbrella shape, which understandably to his team they were annoyed about, because it really reduces their chances of being able to go through to the next round, because it's a really difficult shape. That's like the end of it. So nobody wanted that shape. Interestingly, they were there in that front row with the very intimidating player 432 and some other people, and this guy, my god, was he stressed out. He was so stressed. He was carrying so much guilt on his shoulders to the point where he was then throwing up. He was literally throwing up in his mouth and swallowing it again. He was having all sorts of tummy pains and problems, and the microphone picked it up, and they highlighted this on the show for a really uncomfortable length of time, not just in the choosing process, but also throughout the game itself. And in the VT tape that they decided to weave through this storyline, they chose specific words. Yes, the contestant did say, but when you're answering 100 questions, you don't know the context in which they're going to use it, and the way that they used it was to specifically highlight terms like being a mummy's boy and being very gullible to make them seem weak and soft, and inevitably, they got bullied a lot for their portrayal on the show. And I just think that freaking sucks, dude. This guy was trying to be so nice. He literally said, I'm going to do this because, you know, I'm trying to think of everyone. He was saying that he was going to do this on the premise that if he chose the more difficult shape, he'd want his team to be helped out by the other people. And they were like, yeah, knowing full well that that couldn't happen. And even now in articles later, like I see this one here, he's literally interviewed saying, I think some of my teammates are going to remember me for the rest of their lives as the person who ruined their chance at becoming a millionaire. And what happens? Netflix leans into that shit, man. They highlight so much. They villainize this poor guy who's trying to do a good thing. They load the dice and everybody goes, oh, well, he's so dramatic. He's so whiny. When the reality is, anxiety is a thing, a big thing. And not just that, it also seems from what interviews and articles have been saying that this person also has just come out of chemo from surviving cancer, which is a big deal in itself, but leads to people feeling feeling really nauseous still. So of course, if you have such a big, impactful bodily experience like chemo, which makes you primed to feel nauseous, and then you're super stressed and anxious, making you even more nauseous, what I wouldn't want is for a show to capitalize on my pain and my suffering and encouraging people to see me as some weak person that's then being bullied. It's not okay. I think the ethical integrity of reality TV has been severely compromised for good drama, for good TV, because that's what makes money, that's what gets clicks, that's what gets views. And it's yet another example of us as a society losing our humanity at the expense of greed. Which again, is what the whole show, the original Squid Game show, was trying to talk out about and raise awareness of. So do better, production, do better. Look after people better and don't further platform people who are doing bad things. I think it's as simple as that. I don't like ranting without sort of giving a takeaway message. So I guess like my point to you as a viewer is, please, if you see all of the bullying going on, which I am seeing, which a lot of people are seeing because it's such a popular show, don't partake in it. Don't go onto their platforms and incite hate, because these are real people with real feelings and not fictional characters. And I think as a society, we need to do a whole lot better to really realize where our priorities should stand in terms of how we treat other people. That's it. That is my brain fart. That is my rant. Now I'm overthinking everything and I'm like, oh, my outro of, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Look, just be kind to one another. Be kind and have a great day. That is how I end my videos. I'll see you next time in another video. Bye.